Hi guys, we are in week 16 of Junior English online here. So we're nearing the end of the semester. I'm going to try to kind of ease up and excuse you guys from some of the springboard activities. So as we're coming into the end of the semester, you guys have plenty of time to get caught up. Make sure you've got everything in line so you're passing this class and everything is going well. As always, reach out to me if you have any questions or if you're feeling behind or you don't know what to do, because I want to make sure you guys are successful and get everything in, okay? So I'm here to help you. You just have to reach out. We can arrange something to get together or email or talk to each other or meet at the study sessions, whatever works, all right? So we're in week 16, and your guys' embedded assessment that you will do next week is to write a newspaper article. You also need to include one other editorial piece, like a letter or a picture. A picture is probably going to be the easiest, or some sort of poster. You could also, instead of writing a news article, you could write an editorial. This week we're going to be looking at some editorials. And there's a little bit of a difference between a news article and an editorial. So in your 3.9 springboard activity, pull that up. It says how to read an editorial. So read through ways to read an editorial, and then I want you to answer the question, how is reading an editorial different than reading a newspaper article? All right, so tell me the difference between that. Then you're going to read Facing the Consequences at Eden Prairie High School. And you're going to answer these questions in the graphic organizer. I have the graphic organizer for you in the announcements and assignments. So have that up while you're reading it so you can answer as you're going through that reading assignment. The first question, just for example, says examine the headline, subheadline, and related cartoon if it's in there. This is just like steps for reading an editorial. What will the editorial be about? What guesses or assumptions can you make about the author's perception or perspective at this point? So you're just going to read the headline and then answer that question. All right. So what can you already see about the author's perspective? Already you can kind of tell that an editorial is different because it presents a perspective rather than just presenting the facts like a newspaper article. All right. So go through that graphic organizer. There are more questions there for you to answer as you read that article. All right. The springboard activity and the pacing guide also have a writing assignment for activity 3.9, but you don't have to do it. Just do that graphic organizer and then you're done with 3.9, okay? For activity 3.10, it says how to write an editorial. So we're gonna learn how to write an editorial. So look through the springboard activity. If you pull up activity 3.10, you will see all the steps for writing an editorial. They have them listed there. I didn't list them in the announcements and assignments because they're very, very long. So it talks about before you write. You need to brainstorm. You need to research your topic. You need to get both sides of the issue, just like writing a newspaper article. Consider your audience. So who are you going to address your editorial to? You need to write a thesis. So that's your claim. What is your claim on this issue? What do you think about this issue? What are you going to say about it? And then write about your topic sentences and main ideas. When you start writing, you need to get right to the point. Provide context, so tell us what else is going on around this issue, who else might be involved or affected. Make your point, so whatever your point is, make your point. That's a little bit different than presenting both sides of the facts that we would see in a newspaper article. An editorial is more about making your point. Address your opposing side. So this is more like an argumentative essay. So you also need to address the opposition and then wrap it all up. All right. So those are kind of the steps for writing an editorial. Read through those, or hopefully you were just listening to me. And those you will see when you read an editorial. Then you're going to read a couple editorial pieces. So you're going to read Time to Raise the Bar in High Schools. And you're also going to read New Michigan Graduation Requirements, Shortchange Many Students. So both of those editorials are in the Springboard Activity 3.10. So read through those. Notice all the steps of, or all the parts of an editorial that you see in those. Both of those present a perspective that the author has, and then they back up that perspective. So look at those. Then, in the Springboard 310 activity, there are 2 different writing prompts listed. You only have to do one of them, okay? So you're only going to do the one at the very bottom of Springboard Activity 310. There's also a graphic organizer in there. You don't have to do that. You're just doing the very, very last writing prompt in activity 3.10. So in this writing prompt, you are going to pick one of those articles. You're either going to pick time to raise the bar in high schools or new Michigan graduation requirements shortchange many students. And you're going to write your own editorial where you present the opposing view. So, for example, in the new Michigan graduation requirements article, it talks about how kids are required to take all these classes even though they don't have to. They're required to take high placement classes, and that author thought that that was ridiculous, that all kids shouldn't have to take those classes. If you wanted to write an editorial opposing that piece, your editorial would be about how, yeah, you think kids should have to take all those. Kids should at least have to take one high-level class, and kids should at least have to take all these science and math classes. So you're going to tell me why it's a good thing. That author said it was a bad thing. If you wanted to oppose that editorial and write your own editorial piece on that one, you would be saying it's a good thing, okay? So you're going to write your own editorial. It should be about 3 paragraphs at least, all right? So the editorials you saw were quite a few paragraphs. I want yours to just be 3 paragraphs. Make sure that you can use slanters, which we talked about last week. There's a list of those. Make sure you address the opposition, but also shut it down. Address your point. Make sure your point is clear, and make sure you have evidence or facts to back up why your reasoning is the best reasoning. All right? So that's Springboard Activity 3.10. Springboard Activity 3.11 I'm excusing you from. So you do not have to do Springboard Activity 3.11, right? Woohoo. All right, so moving on to Springboard Activity 3.12. So pull that up. This is about reading and writing a letter to the editor. So maybe you guys have read letters to the editor. Sometimes they're very heated and people are very angry, so they write in. Other times they might be nice, maybe. Those ones often don't get printed. But we're going to look at some letters to the editor. So you're going to read through how to write a letter to the editor, and also read why I hate cell phones. You guys probably don't hate cell phones. But read that article. And after you read that article, you are going to write your own letter to the editor kind of about that article, all right? So your letter to the editor is going to be in response to, like a response to that Why I Hate Cell Phones article. So you need to write your own letter. Make sure you identify your point of view. What is your point of view on that? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Whatever. Make sure you use lots of rhetorical techniques. So why, make sure you are appealing to the audience. Make sure maybe you can use some of the ethos, logos, and pathos things that we talked about in our last unit. And then also make sure you're using, it says follow the letter specifications of your own local newspaper. Basically, you just say, Dear Editor, write your couple paragraphs and then sign your name to it, all right? This is only going to be a couple paragraphs long. Letters to the editor are usually pretty short and sweet. Sometimes they can be longer, but usually shorter and sweeter is better to make your point. So just a couple paragraphs on that where you guys are writing your own letter to the editor about the cell phones article that you read, okay? Lastly, there's the 3.13 fallacies assignment. I'm making that extra credit, okay? So if you want to look through the Springboard activity, and do all the questions that are listed in the Springboard Activity 3.13 and submit that to me, you can, and I will replace it for any missing work that you have, or give you extra credit if you have all your work already in and you just want to bump up your grade. So those are your assignments this week, all right? I'm trying to ease up. I hope you guys are all squared away and feeling good as we go into this last embedded assessment that we have, all right? So, as always, reach out to me if you need some help. I'm here, and I will make sure we get you the help that you need, okay? So, get those assignments done and turned into me, and I will see you guys next week, okay? Bye-bye.